They had gone to New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles to look for the Randy character, and they couldn't find it. And my late agent, Michael Kingman, called me up and he said, Bubba, I need you to come up to the office. He always called me Bubba. So I said, okay. So I go up to the office and he says, we're going to Leonard Finger's office and I'm going to get you in for this film, Creepshow 2. And Leonard Finger was the casting director and his office was in Michael Kingman's office. So I said, really, we're going to go to his office? He said, yes. So we literally went to his office and we're standing in the reception area and he said, you have to see Daniel for this movie. And that's how I got the appointment. So, and I was living in New York City. I was 19, maybe 20. And I was just studying and working on my craft. And I think it was the second thing I ever got.
No one knows we're here. No one at all.
I think it's an adventure gone awry, basically. I mean, I approached it as an actor of being stuck in a nightmare and not being able to wake up. And I think that's what a lot of horror films are. You're stuck in a nightmare, not being able to wake up. And Michael does a great job in establishing all the character relationships. In the very beginning, when we're in the car, through no dialogue, it shows that I'm interested in Jeremy, and that Satterfield's kind of oblivious, and that Paige sees that I'm interested in Jeremy, and because I think I touch her hand or something like that. So everything's really it's established right there, and he really does a brilliant job doing that.
Yes, everyone's gone by mid-September.
Woo! Actually gonna do it, huh? Assume that's that rat.
Jeremy, Paige, and myself flew out of New York City, and Paul Satterfield was in Los Angeles. I have a great Paige Hannah story. I got to know Paige a little bit more. We're in the airport, I think JFK, and I was down to my last $20 when I booked this film. So we're sitting in the airport, and Paige says to me, Daniel, can I borrow some money? I need to get some, batteries and some stuff, some candy or whatever. So I gave her my last $20, never told her. I was like, sure. So when I finish the film and I go back to New York, I don't have money yet. I wasn't paid yet. It takes a little bit of time to get paid and for it to go through your agent. So Paige and I were friends, and I said, I don't, she goes, let's get dinner. I said, I don't have any money and stuff. And she goes, well, I'll take care of you. So she bought me dinner for a few days and kind of took care of me. So cut to years later, I'm in Malibu, and I run into her. And I told her the story I just told you about. Paige, I gave you my last $20. She never knew. And that you bought me dinner. And she said, you see, Daniel, karma.
Come on, it's not so bad once you're in. That's bullshit. Bullshit, man.
Actually, it was a brutal shoot. People don't know about this. Is that I had hypothermia, and they were going to shut down. They shut down production for a little while. It was a small lake, and it was a fresh spring water lake, and it was around 50 degrees. And you can tell by the film I was very thin. I didn't have any body fat, so I was very susceptible to the cold. And I remember one day we broke for lunch, and I still remember holding my tray in line, and people were looking at me kind of aghast. And somebody said, Daniel, you're green. And I felt terrible. And they said, we have to get you to a doctor or to a hospital. And I said, no, I'm fine. I want to finish. Because I'm like, let's get the job done. And they said, no, we have to get you to a doctor. And so they took all of us to a doctor, and I was the worst out of the cast. And they said, he can't work. I had hypothermia, which the core of my body couldn't warm up. That's what hypothermia is. And when we were shooting, so the scenes match when we're on the raft, they had to throw water on us from the lake, and it was really windy. So it was just brutal. It was absolutely brutal. And that whole film, when you watch this film, I am fighting hypothermia, and before every take, I am like shivering, and I couldn't, and I had to calm down and be able to shoot these scenes. It was so hard, and they wanted to continue to work me. And Michael Gornick, I love this guy for this. He said that if you continue to work Daniel, I'm walking off the set. And he had my back, and I love that man for that. And it's important that people know that about him. He said, nope, you're not working him. And they put pressure on him and me, and he said no. And as a kid in the middle of nowhere, my first big job, to have somebody that had my back like that, it meant the world to me. It just meant the world to me. And then when we went back, I had to take these baths to warm my core temperature up. I think it shut down for 4 or 5 days. And then when we went back to work, I had a paramedic. I shot Creepshow 2 with a paramedic. And I could only do 2 to 3 swim scenes. So my day would be arriving there. I still remember the metal rowboat. They'd take me out in the metal rowboat. I'd be wrapped up in all these blankets. And I'd had to get into that water. And when I first was getting into the water, it was pins and needles. That's how it feels. So the first take was brutal, and then I couldn't feel anything. Your body just goes numb. And I was like, Michael, I'm fine. I don't feel anything. And he's like, Daniel, that's not good. So we just did like the 2 or 3 that was allowed. They put me in the rowboat. I'd start to feel woozy, and they'd give me oxygen, and then I'd go to my trailer and I'd fall asleep for 2 hours. And I'm not a nap taker, and it was amazing I could take a nap. But I guess that's what happens when you have hypothermia. You get really tired like that. So I would pass out. I'd sleep for 2 hours. They'd wake me up, and the process would start all over again, and I'd have to have oxygen. It was just crazy. And Paige, she was pretty bad too, because she was thin too. I know they had problems with the blob. They had to come up with something 2 weeks before shooting. It's hard working on water. It's really difficult, and it was a raft. So once you get on water, you have to put everything in boats out there, and most of the people were in wetsuits to deal with it. It was so difficult. It was so difficult, and I have a permanent cold weather injury from that. I get cold like really, really quick. So I left a piece of myself in that film for everyone. I gave to my craft. And of course, the famous sex scene that people talk about. I think at the time, the studios, and in a lot of films, they needed those scenes in order to sell. And it started to end in the early 2000s. Because I've done other films where the directors have said, we have to have a love scene for it to sell in overseas markets and that kind of stuff. I think that's a part of it. And also, I for the storytelling, if I didn't do that and I die at the end, would the audience still feel the same way? Because those horror movies, those teen horror movies, are about revenge. So I end up being this kind of creepy guy with her, and then I get killed. So it's kind of like, yeah, he deserved it because he was a creepy guy. So I don't know if that's in play also. So I think those two things had to do with that scene, because that question comes up a lot with that. So, but that's all. It was all technical, and it's you literally like, hit here, pull back here. It's just very technical. So there's nothing very sexy about it at all. And the famous last shot of me where I beat you and that thing, that was all timed on a pulley type system. That was really fun to shoot and to get that timing right. That was really challenging,
I beat you!
I had to time it, and they had a pulley thing to make it, it was almost like a guillotine thing that went down and it would come up, and I had to time that, and I had to kind of dig my feet in so I wasn't quite moving forward just a little bit. You maybe can see it a little bit. And it turned out really well. I mean, really well. You know, I mean, they came up with that stuff. It's incredible.
Shit! Quit it! It's under us! Vern, you're choking me! Stop!
The filming, it was so difficult, and I think years later, and when I got my fan page on Facebook and the fans started to interact with me, that's when I really realized what we did, because you don't really have a perspective. You know, you're just there and you're hitting your mark and you're doing things, and you can't see the big picture. So years later, and then they're coming out with this edition and stuff, it's incredible. It's just incredible. That's what really hits me, that fans connect to it. And when I've done horror conventions or communicated with fans, just how much they connect to it and how it stands the test of time, that's what really hits me. You know, that. Because you don't know. I mean, you know, at the time, here's another thing. At the time, it was #2 at the box office. Nobody approached any of us for interviews. It wasn't, nobody. It was just this little kind of horror movie, and horror movies just didn't get a lot of respect. It cost, I think, $4 or $5 million to make and made $11 million. It made double its budget. So if that happens now, there's a totally different response. So you have to remember time and place. I was just like, oh, okay. You know, maybe it'll disappear. I don't know. And I remember going in an audition, and producers, I remember the only time I ever heard anything was I went into an audition and the producer said, oh, your movie's #2 at the box office. And I really couldn't quite understand what that meant. I was just too young to understand it. If that kind of puts it in perspective, people just, just connect with it. I've asked this question about people, and I asked it at a convention I did. I said, why is it that you connect with this? And a lot of them connected with the Randy character because they felt like me. They felt that they were a geek, an outsider, and it made them not feel alone. And that really meant a lot to me, because as an actor, you're trying to connect with people. So I've heard that over and over again, that they really identified with the Randy character, not being able to quite get the girl they want, not being the cool guy. So, yeah. I was at this horror convention, and this guy came up to me, and I'll use his name, Haas, and he was from the Appalachian Mountains, and he looked like he was from the Appalachian Mountains. And he was very, very intelligent, this guy. He talked about stories and why don't they make films with stories in them. And I hear that a lot about how they like older movies because it has stories to it. You know, there's a wonderful relationships in The Raft. You get the dynamics, you get the story. I'm kind of the outsider, the geek, the underdog people identify with. He said he watched The Raft and Creepshow 2 like 50 times. And I just thought that was wonderful. I just couldn't believe that. I appreciate that time has put this into perspective.